Mike, listen.
I thought it was
Thought he had COVID. Here's the Emerson. Now we can start. Now Tony's here. Oh, I found this and saw that I was supposed to sign it, not file it. So here. Okay. Okay. Finally unpacked.
Good evening.
January 11th.
It's 6 o'clock, and there he is. I want to welcome everyone to this evening's governing body meeting. I call this meeting to order. I'll ask you to give attention to Councilman Mike Lesser, who is joining us via Zoom for the invocation. Ask you to stand for that as you are able, and then remain standing after the invocation for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Lesser.
You're on mute.
Two Mike Lessers and no noise. Okay.
There we go. Sorry about that, Mr. Mayor.
That's fine.
Tonight, I'd like to invite Pastor R.D. Cogswell, pastor of Mission Church, Topeka, to lead us in the invocation.
Pastor on Zoom, or is he here with us?
He is on Zoom.
There he is. Okay, Pastor? If you're on mute, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Oh, great.
yes. If you'll go ahead and proceed with the invocation, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate being asked. So I just had a quick scripture that I wanted to read in light of what I'm about to pray. There's a lot of good biblical leaders, men and women, throughout the Bible, and King David. And King David was one of them. And in Psalm 78:72, it says that he cared for them with a true heart and led them with skillful hands. And that's what I want to pray for you all as our city council is just that you would lead us well with the skills God's given you and the integrity of your heart. So if you would, let me pray for your meeting. Father God, we thank you for each man and woman here that has put their yes on the table to serve you and to serve this city. It's not an easy job, it's difficult, and a lot of times it's thankless. And so I appreciate this team. It's a diverse team that they don't always agree, which is a good thing. And so tonight at this meeting, I pray, God, that you will give them wisdom and that you'll give them discernment. God, that you'll give them a unity as they work together, as they discuss things, that some will go easy, some will be difficult. But God, that they will truly listen well and make decisions that will better the community and better our city. And at the end of the day, I want them to know that what they're doing matters and that I am encouraged by them and I have hope because people like them serve in our city. So thank you for our city council and bless this time together and bless this meeting specifically in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, R.D.
Yep. Thanks, Mike.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Thank you for all being here. I'll ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Mayor Padilla,
Here.
council members Hiller,
Here.
Valdivia Acala,
Here.
Ortiz,
Here.
Emerson,
Here.
Hill,
Here.
Nager,
Here.
Dobler,
Here.
Duncan,
Here.
and Lesser.
Here.
We have 10 present.
Thank you. We'll move on now to the appointments, if the clerk would read.
A is a board appointment recommending the reappointment of Nicholas Smith to the Topeka Human Relations Commission to fill an unexpired term ending February 11, 2024.
Okay, do we have a
So moved.
a motion by Councilwoman Hiller and second by Councilman Emerson? If the clerk would call the roll vote.
Council members Emerson,
Yes.
Kale,
Brett, you're on mute.
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Lesser,
Yes.
Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Aquila,
Yes.
and Ortiz.
Yes.
We have 9 yes, motion carries.
Okay. Is Mr. Smith in the audience with us? Mr. Smith, if you would stand so we could recognize you and thank you for stepping forward and volunteering in this capacity. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to item 3 on the agenda, presentations. If the clerk would read.
The first presentation is the 2021 Utilities Department fourth quarter report.
Mr. City Manager?
With that, I will ask Mr. Braxton Copley to come forward for utilities.
Good evening, governing body. So remember the old days of show and tell. This is we're going to talk tonight about our advanced metering infrastructure and our meter exchange program. So the starting point is, this is a water meter, no frills, mutational disc. Water goes through this meter, a little disc spins around, and for every time it spins around, it measures a volume of water, which is picked up by this, which is the register. And because it's electronic and communicates with our collector system, we call it an encoder. And then this is the antenna that actually sits on the top of your meter box to communicate, because you don't get any good communication from down here 3 feet below the ground. And this is what actually communicates with our collectors. So, with that, we'll jump into AMI and the meter program. So what we just went over, encoder, meter, should look familiar now. So we start with the meter box outside your business or residence. That communicates with the collector system. So the collectors are put on antennas and other structures. And then those communicate the meter readings back to the water department, where we gather all that information so that we can do our billing. We started this project back in 2018. At that time, over 80% of our meters were over 20 years old. The AWWA standard is meters should be changed out between 10 and 15 years, because meters, as they get older, like us, tend to slow down. So very rarely do we find an old meter that's overreading. Usually it's underreading on the consumption. So when we started this, 50% of our meter reads were being done by our technicians, basically out there walking a meter route. So where are we so far? As of December 31st, we had replaced 58% of our meters. And we have a lot of meters where the encoder goes bad. And so when we have an encoder that goes bad, or the old-fashioned register, we'll change it out with the new encoder. So we actually are at 78% of our meters currently have this new V4 technology, which is the latest technology. And then we have installed 30 of the 32 tower collectors. And we are averaging about 78% of our reads now through AMI. So here is the map. This saturation map was put together by the engineer for Neptune, who basically looked at how do we get 98% saturation of our area. And so these are the collector sites. The two blue ones that you see here, these are the last two that we're putting in. One of those is at Shunga Pump Station, and the other is at Ward Parkway. And you see we've partnered with Topeka West in Washburn for no-cost locations at Washburn. We actually have our collector up on the light standard in the football stadium. So good coverage from there. 501, we're on top of one of their buildings. All the water towers, my pump stations, those are all great locations, no cost for us. We did have a few standalone areas that we had to put poles in the right-of-way. But again, we use the right-of-way, so we didn't have to pay for easements. Total project budget, $12.5 million. The AMI portion of this, basically for the collectors, the antennas, $645,000, and then meter cost to date is $6 million. And I just want to focus on a couple of things. My staff is doing all the meter changeouts, right? So we decided not to go with the contractor, even though we may have been able to get it done. We basically were looking at the cost to do this the most cost-effective method possible. We have changed out 28,000 5/8" meters, and I want to footnote that because a previous administration had decided to move away from 5/8" meters and to go to 1-inch meters. Well, my cost savings by staying with the 5/8" meters that are $158 as opposed to $203, I've saved $1.2 million going with the 5/8. And honestly, for a small house, 700 to 1,400 square foot with a low fixture count, 5/8" meter is all you need. So, next slide. Okay, so what are the efficiencies that we have gained? So, as I mentioned before, 78% of our reads are now being done by AMI. So let me give you an example of one of our cycles has 8 routes. It's got 4,400 meters. Before, when we started this, it took 5 FTEs a full day to read that route. We're now using 1 FTE part of a day to get that route read because most of the routes being read with AMI. Improved accuracy with the new meters and the E-coders. We are achieving that AWWA standard, which is 98, 99% accuracy, which means that we're billing better. We have fewer estimated reads because we're capturing so many of these, and we have fewer skipped reads. And then the real game changer is our improved customer service. So it is a completely different conversation when a homeowner calls in and says, I just got my bill. I can't believe it's $500. My usual bill is $200 a month. There must be a mistake. Your meter must be bad. My call center rep can get into the system and say, well, sir, it appears that you may have a leak. Did you know that last night between midnight and 5 a.m., 1,000 gallons went through your meter? Completely different conversation when you can back it up with those facts. And it's like, oh, maybe I'll call a plumber, right? So we have also having the billing staff now proactively look through accounts in terms of looking for anomalies, contacting property owners, say, look, usually you're at 5,000 gallons a month. I see that you're already at 5,000 gallons so far this month. You may want to check and see if you have a leaking toilet, contact a plumber. So then besides those efficiencies, the question is, so what are you doing with the staff? Well, we've redeployed them to giving us additional higher level of customer service. So our large water meters count for 1.5 billion gallons of water usage. That's 206 large meters. In the past, we were lucky if we got all those serviced every year. Now we're servicing every one of those, which means that we're maintaining it, we're testing it. And then for our meters that do over 1 million gallons a month, which we have about 20 of those, we're hitting those twice a year. In addition, you guys are aware of the lead service line requirements under the lead and copper rule. We've actually been able to do 311 lead service line investigations so far this year. And we were able to clean out, Vactron out 172 boxes and replace the meters in those that were inaccessible to our crew. And then we've started benchmarking our meters. So we have a test bench. We're pulling meters, bringing them in, testing those against the AWWA standards so that we're doing a data-driven decision in terms of when to change those out, as opposed to just whenever we get there, or maybe 10 years, or maybe 15. Now it's based on performance. And with that, gladly stand for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the body? Councilman Dover.
Thanks, Braxton. Good presentation. Can I request one of those old meters that under reads? No? Okay.
We,
Thought I'd check. Thank you.
it's a great question. We're actually taking all those old brass meters and we are selling those at auction, getting a price for, as they call it, the dirty brass. We're not completely taking them apart. We're just basically selling that by the auction it by the ton, and that's giving us, helping offset the cost of this. But
Further questions from the body? Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Braxton, if I understand you correctly, you guys are also watching people's meters, is that correct? When you said that you'll let them know that so many gallons went through from this time to this time, or do they have to request that?
our billing staff is being proactive. Obviously, they don't have the opportunity to go through and check all 57,000 accounts. But where they're seeing an anomaly, they're going through and notifying customers. If they see very high consumption. We are working with Neptune, who's the manufacturer and supplier of our meters. They are developing a forward-facing customer portal, which would be a meter data management portal, which would allow customers to basically set an alarm. Let's say, for example, they could set an alarm, if I have more than 5,000 gallons of consumption a month, I want to know about it. If I have more than 500 gallons a day. Neptune is telling us that Q3 is when they believe that they'll be able to roll that out. We are one of their test cities, so we've had an opportunity to do some testing on this. We're hoping by Q3 that comes out so that we can push that out to our customers, because then that will be a game changer in terms of allowing customers to help manage their own consumption and set alarms.
Okay, so if I have a constituent that is concerned with their water usage and their water bill, then I can have them call staff and we can monitor it for them and go from there. Is that correct?
Yeah, so 368-3111 is the number that you want to have your constituent call so that they can talk to the staff. If that person has not had their meter changed out, doesn't have the V4 technology, that would be the first thing that we would do, is roll that out to make sure that they have that technology so that we can monitor real time what's going on with the consumption. So 368-3111.
Thank you, Braxton, and thank you for that number. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Duncan.
So just what's the reverse of that process? If they do call and we look and we say, oh, your bill is $500 and we don't see anything weird in the meter, what's our process then for following up on possible bad meter or whatever that is? In other words, if we don't see any drip, drip, drip in the middle of the night and the consumption doesn't match the bill, I know that's very rare, so I'm not, but I mean, just curious what the process then for staff is to follow up on that.
You're right, that would be extremely rare. Obviously, if there was a leak, we do have courtesy adjustment programs that would allow for a portion of that to be written off so that the customer wasn't doing it. if it truly is an error with the meter, then we would change that meter out and put a more accurate meter on there. We don't go to try to we don't attempt to capture that lost revenue from an inaccurate meter.
Thank you.
Braxton, is there an expectation that because of this closer monitoring and customer interaction that we'll see some savings along the way as well for the residents?
Certainly, one of the side benefits is the conservation of water by not having leaks, and also the savings to customers to not be paying for water that's going through their meter that's not being used.
Thank you. Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. It's exciting to hear what you're talking about in terms of being able to get out and proactively keep an eye on these meters. My question would be, how often are you finding that there is something wrong? Like you said, annual and sometimes twice annual checking just to make sure the meter is working okay?
That's on our large meters, because those capture, when you're pushing 1 billion gallons through, that is a huge revenue stream for the city. And so that's why on those large meters, which are the 3-inch and larger meters, we go through and we annually maintain those and we test those for accuracy. Because those meters are the ones, they're complicated meters. They have a low side and a high side, so you got greater chance for wear on those. So that's why we want to test those to make sure that we are accurately billing to benefit both of us, both for the city and for the customer, to make sure we're accurately billing those. On the residential side, we're seeing far less issues in terms of it's surprising how accurate some of those 20-year-old meters still are.
Well, that's what I was thinking, actually, but I just wondered that the trade-off of those extra inspections in terms of whether you were really finding things.
Right, but the big one on the meter exchange is getting the new meters with the EV4s to allow for capturing those reads through AMI, as well as to have real-time visibility of what that consumption is.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Emerson.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Copley, first of all, thank you for this. I mean, I think it's a great program. I did have a question, though. I was thinking about the meters and the old meters. Are the old meters Neptune? I think that's what.
Yes, they are. They're Neptune and they're brass, and that's, I was explaining to Councilmember Dobler, we are netting money from the sale of those through scrap.
And I guess my question is that something Neptune would give you more money for, take those back and refurbish them?
No, it's scrap.
Okay. Okay. Just a thought. Thanks.
Just one more question, Braxton. As you're installing these, are you getting many questions from the residents as you come up and as the new meters are being installed? Some about what are we doing here and what is it and how does it happen?
We get a wide range of questions. There are some people that are very excited about getting the new meter and the new technology. Other people, it's not a very warm reception because they think that our person is there to turn off their meter for non-payment.
All right. Well, thank you, Braxton. Oh, Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you. You're reminding me of when my meter got changed out. Are they doing door hangers or leaving any sort of message to people when they've been there for the meters?
I don't believe that they are. So
it'd be something to think about. For us, we were in the house and all of a sudden the water's turned off and we didn't know anything and kind of didn't know what was wrong and ran out there and found they were still there, but we were afraid something awful had happened.
okay, thank you. I
Something to
will
think about.
I will have that conversation with management, see if we can't do a little better job to improve our customer service.
Thank you.
Further questions from the body? Thank you, Braxton, for your presentation. The City Clerk, we have a second presentation, if you agree.
We do. We have the 2021 Public Works Department fourth quarter report.
Mr. City Manager?
At this time, I'll have Mr. James Jackson, Director of Public Works, come forward and present on theirs.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of this honorable body. It's my pleasure this evening to bring to you the fourth quarter review for Public Works. With the help from our great communications team, Mrs. Spiker and her aide, we were able to send some information out to you earlier this afternoon. I hope you got an opportunity to take a look at it. It was our 2021 year-end review, and it shared about 11 different projects that we did, as well as some of the initiatives that we actually employed for 2021 to include the improvement in our winter operations, which you all have seen firsthand. We also installed about 75 radio frequency towers on our 168 intersections, which allow us to actually remote those intersections when there are problems out there, so our technicians don't have to get out of their beds at 2 a.m. in the morning and go out and take a look. They can actually remote in and change most of the functioning of those signals. And Councilwoman, I'd like to report to you that we have 2 alleys that are currently being awarded in NODO, and we have another 7 throughout the city that are under consideration for improvement this year. Okay, to kick it off, first thing I'd like to do is share the list of our 22 major street projects. And oh, by the way, my colleague and I, we were sort of in competition based on the city manager telling us we got to be done in under 4 minutes. So, this starts my 4 minutes. Wow, it's got 4 minutes on it. Here are our major construction projects. We've got them listed, but I also have them broken out in detail for you to kick it off. Northwest Tyler to Lyman to Beverly. We have a start date February 7th with an anticipated completion date of November 18th. We're going to reconstruct both lanes of the road and then put sidewalk in on the west side, as well as curb and gutter. And in 2025, we're actually going to go back in and do Beverly to Paramore. That's going to be a follow-on project. Our next project is Southeast California from 37th to 45th. We have a start date of February 28th with a completion date of December 9th. And here we're going to widen from 2 to 3 lanes and then include sidewalks and curb and gutter as well. Our next project is 17th Wanamaker, Westport Bridge, the Wanamaker to Fairlawn section. And we're going to replace both sections of the concrete here and include new storm sewer pipe there. We have a start date anticipated mid to late April with completion sometime in late November. Our next project, Southwest 12th Street, which is currently underway. We finished the portion from South Kansas up to Washburn, most of it anyway, and we are working on getting the sidewalks and the shared use paths completed on that portion, as well as moving westward from Washburn to complete the Washburn to Gage section. We anticipate being completed by the end of 2022. We have had some challenges with utilities, but we're working through those, getting them to move their assets out of the right-of-way so that we can get in and put in our storm sewers and concrete assets, but we're working on that right now. Next up, we have our pavement rehab and reconstruction program, where here we have our reconstruction projects that we've listed, as well as our pavement repair projects. Where it says miscellaneous pavement repair, that includes a host of projects that are yet to come that we are likely to hear from you in terms of constituents in your areas asking us about certain projects. There's one that has already been placed in the hopper in southwest Topeka over in the Summerfield community, and we had already scheduled that for work, so we look forward to having several more to come in. We have a bucket of money, about $500,000, that we can use for those projects. So as they come in, we'll be programming them based on need. Next up, we have our pavement rehab and reconstruction program. Here's where we're going to be doing most of our milling and overlaying. The one that jumps out at me here is the Gary Ormsby Drive. We are aware that we have major events going out on the racetrack. Right now, we anticipate that the project will be finished design by late March, which means we're going to have a real tight timeline to try to get everything done before Memorial Day. So I was just speaking with our acting interim city engineer about how we plan to do that. The hope is that we will be able to at least get the work started, get a good cutoff point, then hold it up until we get the events completed, and once it's done, then go back in and finish it up. Otherwise, it'll be delayed until the end of the season. But we're fairly confident that we'll be able to get it all done this year. Next up, 2022 concept and design phases. These are projects that we are actually designing right now so that we can go through the phased approach. As I spoke with one of you earlier this evening about how we currently do our projects. We design, then we relocate the utilities, and then we go into construction. Councilmember Emerson, you and I briefly talked about that. That is still the process that we utilize. Even when we do our design build, we try to allocate enough time in there to make sure that if there are any utility issues that need to be addressed, we get those taken care of. Yes, sir. And then finally, we have our metrics that we are happy to share with you this evening. When you look at street sweeping lane miles, you notice, or it appears that there is a reduction. But actually, folks, there was a significant improvement in our sweeping program this year because our Deputy Director of Operations changed the methodology that he utilizes to sweep. And as a result, we went from lane miles, which you saw in 2020, to curb miles, which is a particular method of sweeping that they utilize. And as a result of that, we actually swept every street in this city twice. And in some of the more assiduous areas, we were able to get in and sweep them 4 times. So our performance there improved. In addition to the change in methodology, we also added some equipment so that the sweeper would not come off of the route. We actually offloaded mid-route and allowed him to or her to keep sweeping while we kept the sweeper in operation. The linear foot aggregate alley maintained, you see an improvement there. We actually were able to get one of our motor graders up and keep it running. So as opposed to doing 1 alley in any particular day, we were able to do 2 a day. And as a result, we saw a significant improvement in our performance in that arena, as well as the number of alleys that were maintained. Another number that jumps out at me that I'm happy to share is you'll notice a significant reduction in the number of potholes filled this year as compared to last year, which speaks to the improvement in the street maintenance and the street reconstruction and milling and resurfacing programs that we currently have in place. We reduced them by almost 1/3. We're looking to be able to do that again next year with our program this year. So we're hopeful that when we come back to you at the end of 2022, we will have less than 15,000 potholes having been filled because our roads will have improved significantly. Our target was to get to a PCI value of 70. We are currently at 65.01. We feel fairly confident that we will hit that target. And with the additional funding that I hear has been touted in order to improve, particularly our arterials and collectors, we think that we will have a pretty good season this year, and we're looking forward to next year. As it pertains to the traffic operations, there we performed quite well as well. Nothing significant jumps out at us, at me as I share this with you, other than the fact that we were able to reduce the time in between addressing those service calls. And that was kudos to the team out there who were very responsive when they were getting those calls. And lastly, on the forestry side of the house, here the one thing that you don't see is that we were able to plant in the 4th quarter. That's something we haven't been able to do for a few years. But this year we took out 71 trees. We were able to replant 70. So our plan is to at least do a 1-for-1 as we go into this year so that we're maintaining the canopy within the city. I'm sure you all know how important trees are to our ecosystem and what it does in terms of warming and cooling our environment as it affects the quality of life of our residents here and those who visit. So with that, I'll stand for any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Questions from the body?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Councilwoman Nager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. My question was, so whenever we talk to constituents, it's always a joke like, oh, well, what about this pothole? What about this pothole? Obviously, we filled less potholes last year, which I think that if people were to take a soundbite and just hear that, they would lose their minds because everybody knows of a pothole that has personally affected their life. And I'm glad to hear that the quality is improving. Are we seeing an increased, not increase, are we seeing a faster response time to addressing new potholes or newly reported potholes because we are not dealing with the same load that we were before?
Yes, ma'am. Well, the answer there is yes and no. What has actually happened is we've increased the number of crews that we were actually putting out. Prior to this past season, we were actually putting out between 2 and 3 crews. We've been able to improve that and put out as many as 5. So in that regard, yes, we have been much more responsive and addressing those service requests faster as it pertains to the responsiveness for the service requests.
Awesome. Thank you. That's all I had, Mr. Mayor.
Further questions? Councilman Emerson.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Jackson, thank you for your report. And I will say on the street sweeping, I saw one come down my street for the first time, and I think, well, I lived there 15 years. First time in 15 years this year, so thank you. And is it Director Mr. Trower that's doing?
Yes, sir, Deputy Director Tony
Great.
Trower.
Well, thank you for that. 2 things. First of all, you spoke about a $500,000 bucket of money that can be used for kind of miscellaneous projects around.
Well, I wouldn't say necessarily miscellaneous, council member.
Okay.
There are projects that come up from time to time, and one of those, I'll give you an example, Urish Road last year. Okay. That road was in really bad shape. Everyone knew it. It was programmed for 2025. We had an opportunity to go in and address it last year. We were able to do so, and we used part of the money out of that bucket to do it.
Okay. It seemed, and I'm sorry, I may have misunderstood you during your presentation, but I thought you said you were looking for ideas of things that needed done. Is that? And I'm not trying to put you in a corner here, but
No, sir. I actually wish I could take that back.
Okay. Never mind. Okay. I understand. That doesn't go very far when you're talking about streets. So.
Well, and you know, also, council member, what we do. The application of the funding that we utilize is based on worst first scenarios. Those streets that are in worse shape are the streets that we're really trying to maintain, but we also want to maintain those that are in good shape. So it's a good mix of fixes in terms of the levels of maintenance that we utilize. And because we employ that strategy or tactic, if you will, we're able to hit more of our streets and, more importantly, hit those that are impacting on the larger number of our residents.
Sure, and I don't have any issue with that. I just wanted to make certain, because if I understood you right, I was going to probably start getting a lot of calls tomorrow with places that they could fix. So
thank you, sir.
So the second thing, Mr. Jackson, is you talked about being able to remote control into the traffic lights.
Yes, sir.
And that is great, I think, operationally. But the downside is anything that you guys can access, somebody else can too, some sophisticated technical person.
And that's true, council member.
Are we doing? I mean. And I don't want you to tell me what we're doing, but I assume we have some pretty strong controls on those?
Yes, sir. And we're also working in conjunction with IT. There's cybersecurity efforts. Anything that we employ technology-wise, we're going through IT to make sure that, one, it's not, it doesn't breach our, what's that wall?
Firewall.
Our firewall. And this is part of our system.
And I guess I was more worried about somebody, if it's a radio system, somebody being able to hack into an individual system and a section of lights and turn them all green, for instance.
Yes, sir. And that's true of any system that you put out there, but you have to put the necessary safeguards in place to ensure that as best you can, you avoid or prevent against that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mm-hmm. Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mr. James. I'm looking on here, pavement repair projects on page 7. Thank you for putting that page number on there for me.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm talking about Southeast Golden Avenue north of 21st Street.
Okay.
can we use some of that 500 bucket of monies to put in a sidewalk to pull my people out of the ditches there?
Councilmember,
Because it sounds like Tony only used like 100,000 of that, so there's got to be at least 400,000 to give me some sidewalks. And how far a stretch is that from 21st to, is that to I-70?
no, ma'am, I don't believe it is. And I'd have to get you the actual length of the segment. But that's one of those that, with the city manager, I'm sure something could be worked out to have a discussion on how that's actually employed.
Okay, okay. Well, I mean, if you've got a bucket of money that's available, I really, really want to use that before Tony starts getting calls and the rest of the council starts getting calls. In all seriousness, there's a lot of traffic. A lot of people walk up and down Golden Avenue. And so just keep District Freedom.
Yes, ma'am. And so that I don't get the 8:30 call this evening from the city manager, we do have a program in place. It's called the Infield Program that can assist us in actually putting sidewalks in where they are not. So our engineers can actually take a look at that.
That's awesome. Tell the city manager to call me and I'll talk to him for you. Mr. Mayor, thank you. And before you go on, before the consent agenda, I would like to be recognized if I could. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Okay, I'm next on the list. I have my ticket. 29th and Topeka, northbound lanes.
Yes, sir. We're working on that. We've already devised the plan. We've already awarded or prepared the design and awarded the contract so that we can start working on some deep fill service areas over there on 29th.
Thank you, sir. Councilwoman Hiller.
I was going to help the Director Jackson dig out of the proverbial deep hole he just dug for himself, and remind everybody that assuming it goes through as discussed so far, we will have the competitive program for neighborhoods to have their neighborhood consults in April with utilities and public works. And if there are particular projects that they think are important in their neighborhoods or neighborhood areas, they'll have a chance to put proposals together and compete for the what has been called the SORT money before. So you're welcome.
Councilwoman Valdivia, did you have your hand raised? Okay. Councilman Duncan.
I don't know what you folks are talking about. I get calls all the time about things we can do, regardless of how much money we have or not. But since he's up here, I just wanted to say thank you. I sent him an email last week that said, hey, it looks like you guys are about to do some work on this little stretch of road. And if you just look down the street, you'll see the curbing is all messed up and beyond where you marked it. And he said, let me send some folks out there. And they did. And they said, you know what? We're already going to be fixing it. Of course, we'll go and fix the rest of that. So thank you for that. And the neighbors out there who had keyed me in on are very appreciative of that work. So just wanted to say thank you since you're standing there right now. So thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir.
Further questions? Okay. Before you leave, Director Jackson, I do want to compliment you and Tony again for the work that was done during the snowstorm that we had.
Thank you, sir.
Really, I saw a lot of work being done. I typically get plenty of, okay, they missed my street, or what about my street? I bet maybe 3. Everybody was really happy with the performance. So my compliments to your staff and everybody that takes the time to put in some long hours to get that done.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
You don't know how far that goes with our team. They really appreciate that.
Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too was sitting here thinking, Mr. Jackson, I want to thank you and your team for taking care of a 13, 14-year project. Your team got out there during the snow and removed some boulders that should have been removed 14, 15 years ago. You guys didn't hesitate. You went out there and just got the job done, and I want to say thank you as well. That says a lot about you and your team.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. No further questions? Thank you, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Please. Councilman Ortiz, did you have something?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I wanted to recognize a group that's in the audience that told me they were coming. It's Norma Avery, president of the Topeka Family and Friends Youth Team, and the youth committee. If they're there, if you would acknowledge them, if they could please stand, and we could welcome them this evening.
Okay. Thank you, Councilwoman. Would those members stand so they can be recognized? Very good representation. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you, Councilwoman. Okay, we'll move on to item number 4, if the clerk would read.
A is approval of a public works contract amendment to add construction administration to existing agreement for professional engineering services between the City of Topeka and Bartlett and West Incorporated in the amount of $385,000. B are minutes of the regular meeting of February 1, 2022. There is one application for a Casey's store located at 2133 Northwest Kansas Avenue for cereal malt beverage, and staff is recommending approval.
Thank you. We've heard the consent agenda. What is the pleasure of the body?
Mayor, move approval.
Have a motion to approve by Councilman Emerson. Second by Councilwoman Ortiz. If you call the roll, please.
Council members Kell,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
I'll abstain.
Duncan,
Yes.
Lesser,
Yeah.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Council members Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Acala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes,
and Emerson.
Yes.
We have 9 yes, 1 abstention. Motion carries.
Thank you. Move on to action items 5A, if the clerk would read.
A is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Christina Valdivia Acala proposing the establishment of a business improvement district for the Noto Arts and Entertainment District.
Councilwoman, do you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I think that Tom Underwood would come up to answer any questions anyone may have. You have all the information in your packets. This is something that has been in the works for months now. I will say at first I was a tad ambivalent. However, after talking to a number of the business owners, a couple that even had some concerns at the beginning, I have not had a single call, email since that time of this work that has been done with the city attorney to create this, am I doing an ordinance? Resolution, sorry. I have not heard any complaints of not supporting this. And I think that Noto has had to try to become more and more creative on how it is that they help get the services delivered to business owners. I think we know that they too suffered from the impacts of COVID, along with still finding where their support is at times within the city and the dollars. And I think we're continuing to work on that in a positive and affirming way with all the stakeholders at Noto as well. So I definitely support this, and if you have any questions, Tom is more than willing to answer those.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Before I hear from you, Mr. Underwood, I just want to check with the city manager, see if he has anything to offer before we hear his testimony.
The only thing I would have to offer is this is a project that I started working on with Mr. Underwood several months ago, and it was a process that we started, and then we had change in administration as well as the mayor's office and the city manager's office, and so we're picking it back up. We support it, and city legal's put good documentation together, so I think there's support from the city.
Thank you, city manager. Mr. Underwood, thank you for being here tonight.
Yes, thanks for the opportunity. I'll just field any questions that there might be about the proposal. But let me just say, I've never had a chance to talk about Noto. I remind people about what it was like there about 15 years ago. not that long ago, and it's really been remarkable. And I've had the pleasure of being a part of it for last, not quite 4.5 years now. And I'm pretty proud of what we've been doing the last several years. But Business Improvement District is really an opportunity to continue to push that further, not only with the finances that might be collected, but I think also the culture of NOTO. Everyone is working together to continue to make the improvements that we want to see done. I would acknowledge that while I did the research and the writing of the proposal and the coordination, this was a business-driven action that came forward. This was the support of the NOTO businesses that realized or that knew that we needed to pull our resources together to continue to move forward. So with that, you've seen the ordinance or the resolution. So if there's any questions about the content of that I can field for you.
We have any questions from the body? Councilman Duncan.
I have a question. It's for staff, I guess, or clarification on process here. So tonight we're voting to hold a hearing on March 15th, a public hearing. At that time, we would close the hearing and then vote sometime in April, or would we be voting on the same night as the hearing on March 15th?
Generally, you wouldn't vote the same night, so you'll have the hearing and then vote at the following meeting.
Okay, great. Just wanted to clarify the process. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. For something that's really pretty procedural, like setting a public hearing, I guess this comment isn't necessary, but it's so much fun to watch NOTO and see all the things that are happening there. And this is just an exciting time, particularly if the businesses are ready for this to bring it forward. And so thank you, and Councilwoman Valdivia-Acla, City Manager. That's exciting.
Yeah, thank you.
Easy to support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Underwood.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we've heard the action item. Oh, Councilman Emerson, did you have something?
Yes, Mayor, just a question, and I don't have an issue with this, establishing this, but just kind of a question. In reading through, maybe it's for Ms. Stanley, but in reading through it, it almost reads like there are specific businesses that will be named. Where is that? I saw. Sorry, I had it here. Yeah, it says based on the bid report, the NOTO bid will be financed by an annual service fee imposed annually on the businesses identified in Exhibit A. Like they're almost going to be like delineated out, the businesses, and then it's not. I mean, I do understand that. So might it be, I guess, more clear if that's the businesses within the boundaries or something like that?
You want to answer?
Yeah. Just the way it's
So-
worded, it's like.
So you have the different tiers, 1, 2, and 3, and that's what that refers to as those that are in tier 1, and then it expands out.
Right, thank you, and I totally understand that, but it doesn't match what the verbiage says. In other words, if I say, I'm going to list the following businesses that are going to be covered, and then I go down and all talk about square footage and stuff, that's not listing the businesses that are to be covered. So that's more, it's just a wording thing.
We'll check on that, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Madam City Attorney, did you have something in addition?
No, sorry.
All right, that's all right.
Talking with my hand.
Okay, you've heard the items and the resolution, and again, we're voting to set a hearing date for March 15. What is the pleasure of the body?
Move to approve.
I have a motion to approve by Councilwoman Valdivia-Acla. A second by Councilwoman Hiller. Brenda, if you'd call the roll call.
Council members Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Lesser,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Council members Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia-Acla,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
and Kell.
Yes.
We have 10 yes, motion carries.
Okay, motion carries. Move on to action item 5B, if the clerk would read.
B is a charter ordinance introduced by Councilmember Sylvia Ortiz regarding the election of the deputy mayor by amending Charter Ordinance Number 117, Section 5, as codified at Section A226 of the Topeka Municipal Code.
City Manager?
Just the deputy mayor. Yeah. I believe this is brought forward by Councilwoman Ortiz.
Okay.
And-
Councilwoman Ortiz, would you like to address your proposal?
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really was bothered when we were without a deputy mayor for, a week or two. When in 2005, we voted for deputy mayor the same night that we were sworn in, along with our JEDO members, and we kind of somewhere along the line, just kind of changed that. But this is, to me, is just cleanup. And Amanda, you can jump right in and anything that you would like to add, I'd appreciate it. But I would just like to see this move just kind of for cleanup. That's basically what it is.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Further comments? Okay, we have this action item before us. I would speak in support of it. I just didn't know what I was going to do without that deputy mayor. And then when we finally got Duncan to volunteer, kind of.
Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to make a motion.
Okay, I have a motion to approve by Councilwoman Ortiz and a second from Councilwoman Nager. Brenda, if you'll call the vote, please.
Councilmembers Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Lesser,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Councilmembers Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Aquila,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
Hale, and Nager.
Yes.
We have 10 yes, motion carries.
Motion is carried, and we'll move on now to non-action items. 6A, if the clerk would read.
A is discussion concerning adoption of the 2021 International Energy Conservation Code.
Mr. City Manager.
At this time, I'll call Mr. Faulkner forward to discuss this with the governing body.
Mayor, council, I'm here today to bring a proposal to you to adopt the 2021 International Energy Conservation Code. I can figure out how to, there we go. As the council is aware, we have different codes that we have adopted to, for the construction that goes on in our community. Some of those codes are just strictly for residential, some are for commercial, and some are used interchangeably. We use them for the commercial and residential construction. During our process, when we were going through the adoption of the 2015 Energy Conservation Code, the governing body suggested that we get a more current code. So we went back to the drawing board and we reviewed the 2015 and the 2021 Energy Conservation Code. We did have some assistance from the International Code Council. That's the body that wrote the books so that we could come up to the standard, so we would know what was changed in the codes from the 2015 to the 2021. The review of the codes was done by a subcommittee of the Building Board, Fire and Appeals. That committee was made up of people from our community, professionals that are in the construction field. We looked at the adoption of the code. We looked at the envelope of the building. Basically, is what we're proposing tonight is that we adopt that portion of the Energy Conservation Code that deals with the envelope of the building, and that would just be for the commercial buildings. When we were going through the process, we looked at the code as it applied to the 1 and 2 family residents. We had some concern from the construction community that implementing the new 2021 code would raise the cost of the buildings, the residential buildings, as well as
reduce the square footage. Some of the requirements was going to require different type of insulation, and it was going to require different types of framing. So it was going to reduce the size of the homes, but increase the cost of the homes. So the construction community was concerned about that. So we decided not to. The board is recommending that we don't adopt the 2021 Energy Conservation Code, and we stick with the 2009 Energy Conservation Code for the 1 and 2 families, which is what we're using presently. Also, when we're going through the process, we took the recommendation to the Policy and Finance Committee for their review of that proposal, and they did agree that we could move forward in bringing that recommendation to this body. As you can see from this chart, our neighboring cities, peer cities, some of them do use the Energy Conservation Code. None of them are using the 2021 code at this time. So we would be the first city in this area that would be using the 2021 Energy Conservation Code, and we will be sticking with the 2009 Energy Conservation Code. One of the things that we do, I think is a good idea, is we go through the codes and see how they would affect our community, so we don't just adopt a code. If it comes out, we review it and make sure that it's going to be beneficial to the community. And one of the things that we're not adopting from the code is a requirement for skylights in the commercial buildings. If you have an entryway that's bigger than 2,500 square feet, the Energy Conservation Code was requiring you to put in a skylight in that waiting area or that entryway. The body felt that skylights, they don't always work, they leak, and then you have to come back and repair it. So they didn't think it was a good idea for us to adopt that, so we're not adopting that portion of the Energy Conservation Code. Also, there was a requirement in there, if you had a door that was over 40 square feet, that area where that door was protecting, if you opened the door and the temperature changed, which it will, and then the door closes, you're required to have something in that area to make sure that room got back to the temperature that it was when the door was open, before the door was open. So we're not adopting that, recommending that we don't adopt that section. So those are some amendments that we're recommending for the code. I would also like to, we already took care of that. One of the things that I didn't mention, when we went through, the committee did talk to the Area Builders Association to see if there was anyone on their board or a member that wanted to participate in the review process, and they declined that opportunity. So we did reach out to them to see if they wanted to be a part of this process. And with that, I will stand for questions.
During the presentation, are there any questions from the body for Mr. Faulkner? Councilman Kell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is this something that that has to be done as a whole, or can you take bits and pieces of this code and break it down to what would benefit Topeka, but also benefit everyone as a whole, rather than just kind of saying, we're going to go by a 12-year-old code, or what you've done, because we're kind of on the backside of our neighboring cities.
Yes, we can make amendments to any code that we adopt. We can take stuff out, or we can put something in if we want, but that is something that we can do, and that's what the board was looking at when we were going through the process. What did we want to take out, and what did we want to add? And most of this, there was nothing. We thought that what was in there was okay, and the things that we wanted to take out, we did make some requests to take some things out that weren't going to apply to the structure. What we looked at, the things we took out was things that we can't control. The lighting, like there was things in there that was going to require you to have some motion sensor lights in there, setting the temperature, setting the wattage on the light bulbs, things of that nature that are in there, but was something that we felt would not be enforceable, and is really a matter of preference Some people like it a lot lighter, and some people like it a lot darker, depending on the room. So those things we didn't accept. Most of the stuff that we're looking at with adopting this code is the envelope of the building, which is the outside of the building, the roof, the siding, things of that nature.
Further questions for Mr. Faulkner? Councilman Duncan.
Thank you, Mayor. So if we all go back into our Wayback Machine for a minute, you'll recall this conversation started over a year ago over several code issues and updating a lot of these codes. And one recommendation was brought to us, and then we guys sent it to Policy and Finance, where Council Members Nager and Emerson and myself spent last year with staff working on this. We recommended this recommendation to be passed as is because we can live with it, and it's actually we're very happy staff. We had lots of good conversations. They went back and forth, but went back and was able to get 21 on the commercial side. I think we can be proud of the fact that we will be one of the first areas to be that far ahead of the game. My personal opinion, which I expressed in committee and will continue to have conversations with staff, I think that 09 can be, if not up to 21, can be pulled up to 12 or 15. I do understand some of the concerns of the building community. I just disagree. So we're kind of to that point. So we'll continue to have those talks, but it certainly was the opinion of the committee of Policy and Finance that one conversation does not preclude us from moving forward with the other part of the conversation, and why we were comfortable bringing this to everybody and thought the staff did a great job on this portion of it. We'll keep harassing them a little on the other, and they know it, so it's all right. But I'm very glad they did all this work and worked with us to get us to here, and so just wanted to remind everyone that Policy and Finance spent time on this and asks you to pass it out next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Further comment, questions? Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you. Since I wasn't one of the people that asked you to fast track it and not only go all the way up to the head of the line, but also really condense the amount of time that you and the board spent on it, I was just wanting to ask how it went. I mean, how you felt about it.
I was surprised. I figured the board was going to gripe a little bit about it, but they were really receptive of fast tracking it and going to another code. There was, like I said, I was surprised. There were no negative comments. They were all very positive about going forward and getting it done. So
and this was also, if I may, not customizing it as much as we had in the past, right? Or not?
It was. I think the biggest thing that helped us move through it so quick was we actually had the people that wrote the book to come and help us to move through it. So we knew we didn't have to go through the whole book, all of the chapters. We just went through the things that were changed and looked at those to see if we could adopt those. So they helped us out a lot, pointing those things out. And then we went back after they left to look at those things to see how we would fit them in to our adoption.
That's great, and thank you for that. I thought it was worth checking since it's the first time you went that way to see if they were, a little nervous about it and reluctant to send it forward, but
I was surprised.
It really went all right.
They were very positive. I was surprised.
Great,
Yeah.
That's great. If I may,
Yes.
Maybe you mentioned the Builders Association because I told the city manager I was going to ask about that.
No.
But, when the other one was done, I was on the council at the time, and the Builders Association came along and had really been sort of, the best I could tell, locked at the hip through that whole process. And so, I mean, there's different leadership, but they really weren't interested in participating at all this time?
Which was interesting. When we first went through the process, someone did come to me.
Yeah, because you were here.
Yeah, someone did come to me and they said, well, we weren't contacted. You didn't let us know that you were doing this. So the next time you do it, contact us. I said, okay. And so I did. I actually reached out to them, and I don't know if it was because we were going from the 15 to the 21, and there wasn't that many changes. They did. They declined. They said they wanted to be contacted, and I did, and didn't get anyone.
That's great. Thank you for that.
Okay.
I have one other comment that applies to both of these. and I've brought it up before. There's a suggestion, maybe to you, but as much to legal and the city manager maybe. I think that when we take these international codes and then adopt them locally and customize them in whatever smaller major ways that we're going to do, that we should rename them instead of being the International Energy Conservation Code or the International Building Code or whatever. We should rename them the Topeka Energy Conservation Code, Topeka Building Code, Topeka Property Maintenance Code, which we did before, and so that it's clear that what we're putting forth is what we've done. And in doing that also, there are price tags of about $1,000 on each one of these about purchasing X number of copies, paper copies of the model code. We kind of had this round when we did the IPMC. We licensed the use of that code, and we can go in and take that code and customize it online with the sections that we've changed and put our name on it so that it's online instead of people having to come to the city clerk's office and get a paper copy to see it, or to do what I call bingo, where you've got to have the model code here and then your crib sheet of what we changed locally. We did do that with the, we didn't rename the IPMC, but we did go ahead and customize it and put it online. And I would encourage that we do that and maybe have a couple of copies of the model code around, but because it's available online in all of its iterations, I don't know that we need to spend that money, and then we would make the codes far more available to everyone. So I just throw that out as a suggestion if it's legal, but I remember checking with the international people when the IPMC came down because there'd been concerns about whether we could really do that, and other cities do, and we did. So just a thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Faulkner. This is an action item, so this will be placed on next week's agenda. I could have the clerk read item 6B, but I think we'll have Mr. Faulkner back up here again. Oh, okay. Mr. Kell, did you have a comment?
I agree with Councilwoman Hiller on that, because that way we can sit there and say, this is our code, and then we go by our code, by our city name. So we don't run into situations like we have in the past, especially recently, where we can sit there and say, this is ours, and if someone says, well, I used their manual, I used their code book, but if we have changes in it, we can at least say in that we use this as our basis, but it is our code book, and any contractor or anyone that wants to work in our city knows they use our code book, and it can create a lot less confusion in the future, I think.
Thank you, Councilman Kell. Okay, again, as I was saying, the next item, Madam Clerk, is the International Existing Building Code.
Discussion concerning adoption of the 2021 International Existing Building Code.
Okay, and again, City Manager, Mr. Faulkner, if you would present on this one as well, please.
Mayor, governing body, this is a proposal for the adoption of the International Existing Building Code. As stated earlier, we have different codes that we use for construction within our community. As you can see, some of these codes are in the 2015, and we are aware that the governing body has asked us to update these codes, so we will this year be working on moving the building code, the life safety code, and the electrical code up to the 2021 codes. They're done in 3-year cycles. So the next code that will be coming out will be the 2024. So we're going to try and get all the other codes that we have listed here, especially the commercial ones, up to the 2021 standard. We're going to try and go through that this year. That's one of our goals. The existing building code is going to be replacing the 2021 existing building code is going to be replacing the 1997 Uniform Code for Building Conservation. That's the code that we were using when contractors were coming in and developers were coming in and wanted to use existing buildings. So we weren't using the new building code that would hinder them from constructing or building the building or rehabbing the building at a costly amount. So with us using the 97 uniform building code, conservation code, we were able to work with them on some things and not require them to bring it up to the actual building code standard. These things, even though we did that, the building was still being constructed safe. It was done at a cost savings for the developer, and it helped encourage them to develop existing buildings. We also used the life safety code, which is a code that also helps with the safety of when you're constructing or rehabbing an existing building. That was for that one. The review of this, or the review process, was done by the Board of Building, Fire, and Appeals. They reviewed it, and once again, this board is made up of people from our community that are professionals in the construction area, so they reviewed the code with us. These are the members I was talking about that were eager to participate in going from the 15 to the 21. Also, as a part of that, myself, as the building official, the fire marshal, the plan review supervisor, and the city attorney also participated as liaisons to that board to provide assistance when they needed it and direction. And also, this was one of the codes that the International Code Council came down and helped us with the review of going from the 15 to the 2021. This was also a review process that we took to the Policy and Finance Committee and got their recommendation to bring it to this body. As you can see, if we decide to adopt this code, once again, we would be the only peer city in this area that would be using the 2021 existing building code. There were some notable, once again, we reviewed the code and we looked at it and take a look and see how it would fit with our community. And just two things that we noticed that we would not adopt with the code was the seismic requirements for existing structures. As you're aware, our buildings downtown, they're all attached. And if one building came in and they wanted going to rehab a building, they would have been required to put some seismic stuff in the building so that it wouldn't collapse. But if you just put the seismic requirements on the building in the middle and either building on the side doesn't have it, it's worthless. It's just costly and it's not going to be effective. So we decided not to take the seismic requirements from the existing building code for our community. Also, we did not adopt the floodplain regulations. The city of Topeka has their own floodplain regulations, and it's based on the federal regulations. So we have our floodplain regulations, so we did not adopt the floodplain regulations that are in the existing building code. I also put down that quote down there from Cassandra Taylor, who is an architect in our community, and she was very supportive. She's also sits on our building fire board of appeals. She was very supportive of what we were doing, and she understands that we need to have the regulations in our community, and I just thought it was positive of her to make that comment, so I just put that in there. Because a lot of times it can be perceived that the building code department is in contrast to the architects and the developers in the community, and we're not. I look at us as a team to try and build things in our community. So I was very appreciative of her comment. And that is my presentation on the request to adopt the international existing building code.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Faulkner. I'll ask the chair of the Policy and Finance Committee if you or any of the members of the committee want to make comment on it.
Yeah, again, this was passed out 3-0, although that day it was council members Ortiz, Emerson, and myself. We just changed it up for variety, I think, that day. I'm not sure. But yeah, again, 3-0, and I just want to thank, again, staff and the group for answering our call and doing the heavy lifting as we kept sending them back there. Come on, give us what we need. And so we really do appreciate it. And And we feel this one's pretty good. And again, it's nice to be a little bit, not just ahead of the curve, but as we talked about in committee with staff, I think it'll help down the line when we have to update again because we've already done some of the back work before. So thank you again to everybody who worked hard on this.
Thank you, Councilman. Further questions or comments from the council? Okay, thank you, Mr. Faulkner.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move now into non-action items C, if the clerk would read.
C is public input opportunity to provide comments on how to spend American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA funds, as it relates to needs within the community.
Thank you. And as I understand it, we have 10 people who have signed up.
13.
I didn't get, how many?
We have 13.
13, got an updated list, just in. Okay. Before we get started on this, I want to make sure everybody understands the rules as we move forward in this segment of the meeting. And to that end, I'll ask the city attorney to address some procedures for this section.
Okay, Mr. Mayor. The rules are at the back if anybody needs to read them. I know I learn better by reading, but if you would like to hear them as well. Each person must state his or her name and city of residence in an audible tone for the record. All remarks shall be addressed to the governing body as a whole and not to any individual member. In order to provide any additional time, you have to sign up to speak in advance, and you have to complete your minutes your comments within 4 minutes. And then there's behavior that is not tolerated from any speaker, such as uttering fighting words, slander, invasion of privacy. And then any speaker that is in this type of behavior can be warned by the mayor. And if the behavior continues, the speaker will be ordered to cease their behavior and could be removed from the room.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, we will start. Councilwoman Hiller.
Maybe I misunderstood, but I think what you were going for was that we had agreed in advance that we would not do extensions. It would be 4 minutes, 4 minutes, 4 minutes, 4 minutes, and that we also were doing this as just a hearing. We were not planning to discuss amongst ourselves or ask questions. We were simply going to let everybody speak and listen. Correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
And Mayor, and those comments are to be directed as to how they recommend the dollars are to be spent, correct?
Correct.
Right.
And Mr. Ledbetter's here, not here tonight, so he doesn't even get an extension if he was here.
He knew.
Yeah, apparently. Okay, thank you for that clarification, City Manager. We'll move forward then with 6C, and I'll call the first person to the podium, Riva Waiwatis.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, and Mr. City Manager. Thank you for this opportunity to come before you and share some information about childcare in our community and the impact that COVID has had on the childcare industry. My name is Riva Waiwatis. I am a resident of Topeka, and I am the Executive Director of Childcare Aware of Eastern Kansas. Our agency is a childcare resource and referral agency licensed through the Kansas Department of Health and Environment. We operate the Parent Resource Center, helping families from the state of Kansas with their childcare search, and working directly with childcare programs in our region, offering workforce training and consultation services. As a part of the State Childcare Aware of Kansas Network, we collect and have access to all sorts of data related to childcare in our state. For some time, many Kansas communities, including Topeka, have acknowledged that there has not always been enough childcare to meet the needs of working families in the community. Infant care and care during non-traditional hours, which is typically before 7 and after 6 during the work week, and then on the weekends, has always been in short supply. However, the pandemic has had a direct and a very significant negative impact on the childcare industry, and we have seen a record number of facility closures, making the challenges of finding childcare exponentially worse for the families that need it. Here are just a few numbers. Thankfully, I've given you all written copies, so you don't have to try to remember all of this. But in January of 2020, Topeka had 46 childcare centers, 151 family child care homes, which are people that work from their home and can be licensed for 10 children, and 81 group family child care homes, which are licensed for 12 children. In the last 2 years, 7 child care centers closed and 2 new centers opened, leaving us a total of 41, a reduction of 5. Family child care numbers saw the same trend with 40 closing and 14 opening, resulting in a total of 125, a net loss of 26. And group family child care saw 21 programs close and 8 open, resulting in a total of 68, a net reduction of 13. Overall, this shows a loss of 44 child care facilities, representing over 700 child care slots in our city. And I did give you access to a point-in-time data sheet that you can look at that gives Shawnee County point-in-time information. As dire as these numbers are, I did want to lift out and mention that they would have been much worse if it had not been for the investment of local child care sustainability grants through the 2020 Shawnee County Spark funding. These grants were truly a lifeline and helped many child care programs stay afloat during a time of significant uncertainty. These local grants were followed by a series of sustainability grants offered at the state level, which all focused on retention of current programs. And while that's important and continues to be critical, we certainly don't want to see more closures. It is now time to take action to build additional child care capacity and addressing new startup and workforce issues. We know that childcare is really important to our community. Our current capacity is around 57%, which means that only 6 in 10 families that need childcare can actually have access to a slot, and that doesn't even account for cost or quality. So I really encourage you to consider an investment of ARPA dollars focused at addressing childcare capacity, and that should be seen as critical and a necessary next step in positioning our community for economic growth and success. I have given you my contact information if there's additional data or information I can supply for you, and I thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Mrs. Waters. Okay, second person I'll call is Melodine Bird. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes, you did.
Thank you.
I'm Melodine Bird, and I reside in Topeka. Good evening. It's my pleasure to speak on behalf of Topeka Jump organization this evening. I attend El Shaddai Ministries Community Church, and I'm on the executive committee of Jump. Jump is made up of 31 faith communities who've come together to be a vehicle for marginalized populations to impact systematic change that will address poverty and injustice in Shawnee County. Tonight, I'm going to explain our listening process, which we use to surface and prioritize community problems of research and action. And I will share the results of our 2020 and 2021 listening processes, which summarizes people's most immediate needs. Our listening process is conducted annually from August to November. We train on average 60 lay leaders to facilitate small group discussions where participants answer discussion questions like, what keeps me up at night? What concerns me about the neighborhood I live, work, and go to worship? There's a designated note taker that records attendance and stories for the Jump staff to read and sort through. I am a lay leader who's been trained. I've had the past 3 years, every year, a house meeting. Here are the results from 2020 and 2021 fall meetings. In the fall of 2020, we trained 52 people throughout 29 congregations who successfully conducted a house meeting. There were 377 people in attendance. During those meetings, 313 of them chose to be active Jump members. The number one community problem discussed, despite Jump having already named this a priority in the past, was high rent and safe living condition and dilapidated housing. The second most prevalent category discussed was healthcare and mental health issues. In the fall of 2021, we trained 55 people throughout 31 congregations who successfully conducted a house meeting. There were 356 people in attendance. The number one community problem discussed once again was high rent and safe living conditions and dilapidated housing. The second most prevalent category discussed was concerning the well-being of youth and specifically adequate child care options. A close second was frustration about who to call when people are in a mental health crisis. By the evaluation of 70 clergy and lay leaders for faith communities, we consider the most pressing needs to be address housing equity by investing in low-income neighborhoods and building rental units below the market value of $700 all over Topeka, to increase access to adequate child care, and develop a plan for people in mental health crisis to have a treatment bed in Shawnee County, whether voluntary or involuntary, for longer than 72 hours. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, we have by Zoom, Treasure Hopkins. Mr. Hopkins? Okay.
He's on.
Are you on, Mr. Hopkins? You go ahead with your testimony. Are you unmuted? Can you hear us? We cannot hear you, sir. Check to make sure you're unmuted.
He's unmuted, but he doesn't.
He's unmuted, but the audio is not coming through.
Volume turned up? Yeah. Mr. Hopkins, I'm going to come back to you so we can see if we can take care of the technical difficulties, and we'll move on to the next one. I won't forget you, though, sir. Okay?
Can he hear?
Next, we have on Zoom Scott Gowan. He's not there? Okay. In person, I'm going to move on. We'll come back to these others just to give them a second chance. Ms. Sandra Lassiter.
All right, good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council.
Good evening.
Bless you. Sandra Lassiter, 4210 Gage, and I'm very pleased to be here tonight to see all of you. I was just looking at this American Rescue Plan Act funds, and I like this statement. It says, as it relates to the needs within the community. I like that. I was just talking today to some of my students about a word that's probably familiar to you in the English language, and that word is homophone. And a homophone is a word that it has the same meaning, it has the same sound, but a different meaning. And I thought about the word hour, H-O-U-R, and the word hour, O-U-R. This is the hour for our community to use our funds for our people. I just thought that was kind of neat that I shared that with them. So as I began to kind of research this, I understand that we're supposed to receive an amount of about $45 million. That sounds like a little bit of money. And I thought, as I researched, Wichita, if I'm not mistaken, has allotted or set aside about $10 million for nonprofits, small businesses. Kansas City has done the same, I believe. And I'm thinking Topeka, Kansas, capital, center of the US of A. It seems that we should want to have the very best, not equal, but fair amount for some of our small businesses, some of our nonprofits. And as I look around the city, I'm thinking, my goodness, we probably have as many small businesses and nonprofits as we do restaurants. And we have a lot of restaurants in Topeka. So $10 million is only not even a thumbnail, but maybe a tiny nail as a portion of this money to be allotted and set aside in Topeka, Kansas for our community. Job training, and then we know there are many agencies that are trying to address community violence. We're talking about digital literacy training. Our young people that are in the streets, or some of them that are about the streets, could get up off their seats and get into some job training and get some really good paying jobs. I just am so impressed with the opportunity, I like to use that word, the opportunity allotted to us in Topeka, Kansas, to spend this money, not my money, not your money, not celebrities' money, but our money on our community in this hour. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am, for your comments.
We may have the audio.
Okay. For which one, Mr. Trajor? Okay, Mr. Hopkins, we're coming back to you. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you guys. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you fine, sir. So.
Okay, good evening, council.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Yes, I'd like to piggyback off of the previous statements. We'd love to see some of those funds go into community development, economic development for these communities that are lacking housing. I read something the other day that we have about 22,000 uninhabitable homes in Topeka. I mean, that's just something we have to do something about as a community. We could do together, and I think these funds could do something towards that, as well as mental health and substance abuse. These are two things that are, we're going to talk about crime being down in the city, but we're not going to talk about substance abuse and mental health. We have programs in place to address these things in these neighborhoods. We could at least give them a hand up, pat on the back, and these funds, just a little bit of that. Because, I mean, we already have programs in place, like I said, in these communities that are doing so much. This is just a little help for those programs. We have things in the Southeast community as far as programs that, don't quote me on this, but Kansas Gas and Evergy have said they donate to projects where we can get affordable housing on Fremont Hill, for example. Just a couple of things to put on you guys' minds. The city could get behind these things. I'm sure we could get it pushed into action. And that's just the last thing, the last key to the cog is getting the city behind some of these projects. This would be a nice ask if we could get some affordable housing in Southeast and Central Topeka. I mean, it's really that simple. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Hopkins. Gretchen, do we have Mr. Scott Gowan back on now, maybe? Excuse me? Okay. Move on to Mayor Joan Wagner.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. I'm Joan Wagner. I live at 4036 Northeast Kimball Road, so a little north of North Topeka and way out in Shawnee County. I am president of the Topeka Performing Arts Center Board of Trustees, and I'm going to refer to it tonight as TPAC. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to present the views of the trustees on the possible uses of approximately $45 million in the American Rescue Plan money. We would like for you to spend part of that money on repairs and deferred maintenance on our part of the city's building. I viewed the council's January work session. The consensus that emerged for two broad goals of debt reduction and community projects seems appropriate to us for this one-time money. TPAC also supports the notion expressed by some council members that community funds should focus on capital improvements or infrastructure and be directed to establish programs, not new ones. We understand that there will be an application process, and TPAC will submit its application at the appropriate time. For my remaining time, I want to make 3 points. First of all, TPAC in the building is a city responsibility. The TPAC Board of Trustees operate under a contract with the city of Topeka. Under that contract, the city pays utilities and should provide repairs and upkeep of the building. Recently, you approved 2 items from a capital outlay fund for roof and HVAC repair. Since then, a windstorm came through and ripped off part of the roof and damaged it further. So the city is now trying to get temporary repairs to that portion of the roof, but you're going to need to fix the roof before that's done. We do appreciate that you are paying the utilities and you make a contribution to our operating budget, and we hope to see the roof repairs finished soon. But the truth is, there are a whole lot more things that need to be fixed in order to make the building usable and desirable. When you go as many years as we have with deferring the maintenance, you just get behind. Principally, we have HVAC issues throughout the whole building that really need the city's attention. My second point, Topeka needs a facelift at TPAC. The 1991 renovation of the old municipal auditorium into a new state-of-the-art performance hall is now 31 years old, and it needs attention to continue attracting the kinds of acts and business that we would like to have. And what better time to renew those spaces with ARPA cash so that the expenses don't fall into your capital improvements budget. Finally, TPAC is an asset to the downtown and the city of Topeka. When we look at the building usage in 2017 through the beginning of 2020, both the downstairs and upstairs rooms were used 80% of the time by members of the Topeka community for their programs. Everything from dance recitals to the Nutcracker to graduation ceremonies, weddings, I mean, you name it, and it was there. Only 20% of the people who attend come to what you would call the touring shows or the concerts and things like that. In fact, now that the pandemic has occurred, our average attendance has dropped, but it used to be 74,725 attendees per year. 75,000 people a year come through the building. We request your help. I thank you for having the time. It's kind of fun to be back here.
Thank you, Mayor. I called now Laura Pederzani. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes, thank you. My name is Laura Pederzani. I'm resident of City of Topeka, District 2. I'm also the North Topeka West NIA president. Thank you so much, mayors, council member, and city manager, for the opportunity to provide public input on the ARPA funding for City of Topeka. This funding has been described as a once-in-a-generation investment. When we use the word investment, we talk about future material results, something that will be worthwhile and useful. Often when I have brought up the idea of the future with my neighbors and with my NIA, the general consensus and response is that it is simply too difficult to imagine the future when there's so much missing from the present. I have spoken to this body on several occasions about specific issues my neighborhood is dealing with when it comes to infrastructure, housing conditions, and blight. We have vacant properties, many with back taxes and tens of thousands of dollars that sit and continue to deteriorate rather than be put up for tax sale, transferred to new ownership, and used for affordable housing. Our streets and yards in North Topeka West flood when we receive even the smallest amount of rainfall. As a neighborhood, we have been told, no, it's too expensive, many times by city departments as it directly relates to these issues I'm describing. And so many of our residents have simply given up hope. The consensus right now in the city of Topeka in our neighborhood is that low to moderate income neighborhoods and the oldest neighborhoods in the city, like North Topeka West, the first ward of Topeka, we don't matter. We aren't shiny and new. Our houses are not waterfront unless it rains and floods. And some residents just feel we have simply been left behind. I'm coming here today hoping this governing body can change that narrative and provide our oldest and most chronically underserved districts a glimmer of hope. We're asking for you to help us make that once-in-a-lifetime investment in our neighborhood. I know I have already provided substantial information regarding stormwater infrastructure in our area. In an effort to be respectful of your time and the time of other attendees tonight, I will simply say that stormwater infrastructure improvements to our area, as they've been previously identified, are the top priority for our neighborhood. We're asking you to utilize funding to address the stormwater projects that will lift underserved areas like ours to the same standards that currently exist in other neighborhoods. Our second highest priority is a sincere investment in affordable housing development and residential counseling citywide. Instead of continuing to allow properties to deteriorate, invest in the Housing Trust Fund. Allow the city's community partners like Habitat and Topeka Jump to work with code enforcement to get properties on tax sale lists and into new ownership. In a 5-block stretch of my North Topeka West neighborhood, there are 4 empty houses that could be converted into affordable housing for residents. Again, imagine how many more of these properties, and I think someone said upwards of 20,000, are scattered across the city, forgotten, much like the LMI neighborhoods that they occupy. Our third priority includes an investment in expanded high-quality childcare and affordable childcare citywide, specifically access to childcare assistance programs. Our residents, and especially our second and third shift workers, experience immense difficulty finding safe and affordable options for their children. Topeka is not alone in this struggle. The entire state of Kansas is in a childcare crisis. However, Topeka has the opportunity to lead in this area instead of follow, by investing in partnerships with centers to stay open during non-traditional work hours and provide grants to make childcare improvements and provide additional training opportunities for providers and staff. I know this is a lot to ask. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We call now Irma Forbes.
Mr. Mayor, City Council members, thank you so much for the opportunity to relay my recommendations. But before I get into that, I'd like to say Mrs. Joanne Pavler sent her regards, and she would have loved to be here, but circumstances made it a little bit impossible for her. I have several my name is Irma Forbes. I do live and work here in Topeka, and I'm also the president of the Highland Acres NIA. I have several recommendations, and because of the time, and I'm sure there are many others waiting to present, I have given my information, written information. I have passed it out. So I'll just do the headlines to conserve a little bit more time. I'd like to, I know that this was already discussed and partially resolved, the elimination of the food taxes. I just want to reiterate that we provide several shelters and soup kitchens, etc., to provide food for the people who have challenges in that area. It seems a little bit counterproductive that we tax people in getting fresh food and then we provide a food pantry to help out the situation. Also, I'd like to address or recommend that we provide bus shelters for school children and also for the general public. I have watched children stand in the inclemency, rain or snow, and get all soaked and have to go to school. There is no shelter for the kids. They have a choice of staying home that day or going to school in an uncomfortable situation. The elderly also take the bus services to go to and from their homes. And some of the bus stops is just a stick in the mud because there's no pavement and not even a little bench for these people to sit on. Crime prevention and promotion of safety. In some areas, there are very little or very poor lighting. And with that, I think that would encourage crime because nobody wants to be seen committing a crime. So there would be, I think it would be a very good thing to help with better and brighter lighting. And also, in that same note, the sidewalks. We need better sidewalks for the children, educational programs, grant opportunities for nonprofits who are doing good work in the neighborhood, and common sense incentive for small businesses, like, for instance, real estate, developing and fixing old houses, which the city would tear down. It would save the city the time and the expense of tearing down that and helping smaller companies rebuild and rent modestly to other people. The last thing I would like to mention, which I did not write down, but is reimbursement and or adjustment for high utility bills due to unavoidable occurrences of nature. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. We call Mr. Lazone Grace.
Good evening, everyone. Lazone Grace, citizen of Topeka. I did share also my notes via email and everything of my comments. So I have one sheet that really just sort of breaks all of them down, and then I created other individual ones that just sort of gives a vision of what it really entails. One of the things I wanted to start with, though, was the American Rescue Plan should probably, the way that I see it, is that it should rescue American neighborhoods, and therefore it will rescue those individuals in it that have been impacted, and therefore the community at large. The infrastructure bill that has been passed and signed and passed should fund infrastructure. When the rescue plan was first signed and the city started compiling its numbers and recommendations, there was about, and I'll just put a number, around 26 million, 27 million for infrastructure. Now, personally, I didn't think that, the infrastructure bill would pass, but it did, and it was signed. So it is a guarantee that cities will have infrastructure monies, probably a lot more than 27 million. It seems that this is an opportunity, a once in a lifetime or generation opportunity of using some funds to rescue our neighborhoods on things that people have talked about and wanted to do, but it was always that we don't have the monies to do that. The problems with cities and states right now is they have more money to really manage and deal with. So the things that I proposed or recommended is not something to be spent over 1 year, that you have until December, the end of December 2026 to spend, and that these monies should be, whatever you spend it on, should be gauged on an annual basis, other than some places are trying to spend everything at once, so there's no reason to do any management. We really do need some on-hands support. There's more other monies at other state agencies that I work with that they receive. I would hope that whatever you do, that you can work on how are these different pots of money coming to the state, the county, in other areas. How does that all play in? Because there's no reason to try to do everything for any organization, things on your own, when there are other opportunities that are out there with all of this monies. So Mr. Gowan wasn't able to be there, but I definitely support digital literacy. Everything that I have outlined on mine are allowable uses of funds. So it's really just your choice on what you're going to use it for. I have put some dollar amounts to it that I'm not saying that just because pie in the sky, but I've worked in this community for 28, 29 years. These are coming from a compilation of everything that I've heard from people, business owners, a lot of the work that I have done, and it won't fix everything, but I think that it will get us a little bit further down the road. As others had alluded to, and I shared in mine on the small business, Wichita did something. Kansas City did something. I would like to see the capital city do something. Job training. There have been several plans or comments on what should be done in the neighborhoods, blight, changing the culture, the budget, and a lot of the things dovetail in each other. I think that this is an opportunity, because job training is allowable, to use this moment so that people could be trained on doing this work in these neighborhoods and not just be complaining about it not being done. And even finally, on community violence intervention, that is more than gun violence. So I've shared documents from the U.S. Department of Labor that shows other areas that should be considered. That is a part of evidence-based community violence intervention. And in the end, I would hope that whatever the process is, that it's going to be fair, open, and competitive bidding process. That's not just the right thing to do, that's the legal right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grace. Okay, go back to Zoom. Hope it's working. We have next Erica Babb via Zoom. There she is.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes, I just wanted to make sure.
Okay, when you're ready.
Good evening. Of course. Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for doing this tonight. I appreciate you asking for the public's input. There's nothing in the world like the peace of mind you get from good quality child care. When my son was just 5 months old, we were introduced to the wonderful world of Manchester School for Young Children. And countless times since then, they have shown me that sending Evan there was one of the best decisions we ever could have made for him. It has been a magical, irresistible setting that we'll never forget. Unfortunately, however, after the last 2 years of the pandemic with no end in sight, the director has made the incredibly hard decision to close Manchester at the end of this month. And quite honestly, as much as I've cried about this, I don't blame her one bit. Since the start of the pandemic, child care centers have been forgotten, left out, given little relief, if any at all, and nothing but mountains to climb. Licensing regulations they have to continue to follow have also added a layer of difficulty in maintaining the ratio of teacher to child in the classroom, as well as not mixing ages together, as teachers and students have both been affected by the virus. Child care workers were never deemed essential in any phase of the pandemic, even though there is no way I could have been able to stay gainfully employed if I didn't have a safe place to send my son. Since they weren't considered essential, they were left to figure out things on their own, including guidance of mitigation, funds for cleaning supplies and masks, and no way to make ends meet when they had to close for quarantines. Countless months went by with staffing shortages that caused entire classrooms to be closed, causing families to be without care, children unable to move to their new classrooms when they reach a certain age, and causing the child care staff to be stretched thin with pay less than they could make at other jobs with half the level of responsibility. And many child care centers don't have much more to give. Running a child care center is costly, and families are already paying an average of $10,000 a year in Topeka per child if you can find an opening. Pre-pandemic statistics showed that there were 12 children per child care spot here in Topeka. Manchester is actually one of several centers that have had to close their doors in the last 2 years. But in my mind, it doesn't have to be this way. Manchester is and has been a magical place to send my son for the past 4 years, and I'm clearly heartbroken to see its doors closed. And the frustrating thing to me is the fact that I don't believe it ever should have gotten this difficult. And it may be too late for Manchester, but I'm here tonight to talk about what we have remaining and what we can do to support the child care facilities, as well as why it's so important for the city of Topeka to thrive. I'm pretty positive I've heard almost every single one of you speak on the population decline here in Topeka, and in the most recent elections, I'm pretty sure this was something many of you said you wanted to work on. Well, in my eyes, here's your chance. If you want people to live here, work here, move here, you have to be sure to maintain quality child care facilities in every way possible. Since we received the announcement of Manchester closing, I, of course, have been on the hunt for child care, as my son will need to be in daycare another year, and I have another one on the way. As part of my search, I talked to one facility that said, sure, I'll have room for your kids, if you can find me 5 new teachers in a month. Another one said they have a waiting list and they don't have an opening for another 2 years. Every single one of the facilities has shared challenges that they have faced with staying open and avoiding the virus amongst an age group that is not yet able to be vaccinated. Currently, guidelines state that unvaccinated individuals have to stay quarantined for 10 days. That's 10 days where the kids, the teachers, the parents are all having to stay home and outside the workforce. Now, I'm not sure of all the red tape that will come along with these ARPA dollars, but if you are able, I think it would be a real investment in our city and our youth to contribute to child care facilities so that they can stay open, pay their workers a living wage, perhaps even have benefits. Can I have like 2 more minutes? Is that okay?
I'm sorry, Ms. Bebb, there's no extensions for this evening.
Okay, well, I'll be emailing everybody my statement anyway, but thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next person we have is Danielle Twemlow via Zoom. Twemlow?
Good evening. Yes, this is Danielle Twemlow. I am a resident here in Topeka in 66605 zip code. I appreciate you having us here tonight. I am echoing the sentiments of many people who have spoke today. And of course, Erica speaking has got me also teary as my child was able to experience the magic of Manchester for many years. But what is also really concerning is as I sit here and think about the families' stories that I wanted to share with you all, with the impacts that they are experiencing, it's really hard. A family recently with 4 children that was living in a 2-bedroom home, snakes coming out of cracks in their walls, a landlord who wouldn't fix basic necessities within the home. Over and over again for months, we tried budgeting, we tried calling for assistance, we tried reaching out for landlord-tenant rights, and for months and months, this family who was making very little money, that very minimum wage, using one vehicle to get around and try to manage their time, eventually couldn't pay anymore because they were experiencing such high utility rates for broken pipes that weren't being fixed within the house and whatnot. And went to court with that landlord who eventually they gave 3 days to evict them. And this family ended up living on the floor of a friend's home. So 4 children, 2 adults, in another home with 5 children and another adult. And immediately Impact Avenues swooped in, first phone call, and they were there to help and providing services and how to obtain birth certificates and simple things that really take a lot of time and management and help to acquire, figuring out utilities so that we can get prepared to get into a new home. And even after they were able to be approved for a voucher after months of sleeping on the floor, it was still another month of us searching to find a home for them to live in. It took months and months, a total of 7 to 9 months, before we were able to find affordable and safe home, even with that voucher that this family could move into. And luckily they did recently be able to have a safe and affordable home, thankful for this wonderful program like Impact Avenues that are stretched very, very thin, and the resources that they have available to help families now. I know utility rate increases are over a period of time until 2030, and these funds can help families now. They can help put families in affordable homes. They can help families find the child care they need now to be able to thrive. And then if we invest in the now, the hope is that by 2030, when our rates of our water bills have increased to $27 more than they are today, hopefully we have set up families in our community to be able to afford that 1% increase that they will be experiencing at that time because we invested in now. So I really hope that this story, as you might think about it as being a story of many, many other families that are experiencing these same troubles every single day, and that the wonderful organizations who are putting everything they have into making sure that our families can thrive could utilize this to continue to make other families successful. Luckily, like the family that I told you about tonight has been able to do. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ms. Trumno. On Zoom, we have Mr. John Campos. Yes. Mr. Campos, if you can hear us, start when you're ready.
Go for it, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead and start when you're ready. 4 minutes, please.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. I appreciate the time to speak with you regarding the ARPA funds that are being brought down here by the Treasury. Again, our needs just have been stated tonight. They are pressing and they are currently now. The issues that were stated by the NIA presidents that have made their way this evening, again, I would like to emphasize the points that they had made, and the Madam Mayor eloquently stated about our TPAC, which is our home theater. As long as we're maintaining our priorities with regards to how we spend this money, I think we'll be within the green. There are 4 things I would like for us to prioritize these monies for. They go back since I've moved back to Topeka from the city of Chicago. And they are meat and potato issues that are the doings of government, what government does. And the first one is a comprehensive sidewalk program. There are a lot of people that we know who are hurting in the community, and the 50-50 program is not a viable program at the current. It'd be a great investment to invest monies into, ARPA monies into the sidewalks and any established infrastructure in the easements in all 9 districts. I've been in all 9 districts. I can tell you places where sidewalks are buckled from east to west, north to south, throughout the entire city. It is not a North Topeka, a Central Topeka, Oakland issue. It is a Topeka issue. You can find them in Collins Park. You can find them in Washburn. You can find them all the way out on the west side of Topeka. It is a major issue that I think every single Topekan can get behind and would support using that funding to pay for, in its entirety, the reconstruction of sidewalks and curb cuts. Another thing is maybe the establishment with our new mayor, a mayor's office of special events. This is something that Mayor Daley did when he first came into office, the city of Chicago. Very unique program. At the very essence of it, the mayor created the vibrancy by creating free events to bring Chicagoans into the very heart of the city. Be something that you could do in tandem with Visit Topeka, and they could be whatever you desire and of your own creative mind. So it wouldn't be a bad idea to allocate a few $1 million to the mayor's office to do events that bring the entire community together that are hosted by you, Mr. Mayor. Another thing that I would like for us to do is child programs. In the last year and a half, I have seen from 12th grade inside of a public school all the way to preschool. Literally, I've been transferred a few times within the district and have seen the immense need on the ground in the trenches of that full spectrum of ages of every child in this city. And it's time that we have the city invest directly into the youth, invest in programs, after school programs, and summer programs. Because the reality is that the volume of need that we have now, this pandemic has created now, is beyond what can be handled by our established pillars, Boys and Girls Club, Big Sisters, Big Brothers, Topeka Youth Project. The volume is so massive that we have to be rather creative in how we address needs that are not seen, right? That they're not seen. You don't have any children coming to give you their experiences and giving you their guidance and where they think this money should be or be going to. So that's an interesting perspective to consider as you're considering how to allocate these dollars. And the last one is I'd like to see an allocation of a decent size of this money be allocated to JADO for small business development, retention, and to help those who do not receive any type of funding. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Campos. By Zoom, we have Mr. Michael Bell. Find him?
coming.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, can't see you. There you go.
There's my video.
There you go.
I was being denied there for a while.
Recognize the hat.
I didn't realize I looked that bad, that they wouldn't want me on video, but here I am nonetheless.
Whenever you're ready, Mr. Bell. 4 minutes, please.
Okay. Let me get my script up here. My name is Michael Bell. I'm a Topeka resident and the Tennessee Town Neighborhood Improvement Association president. I come before you tonight because I have concerns about discussions so far about how approximately $45 million in federal ARPA funds will be spent in Topeka. So far, spending the majority of those funds, approximately $35 million, on infrastructure has dominated discussions, leaving only approximately $10 million for community purposes. Given the breadth and depth of the pandemic and its across-the-board effects on our society, the U.S. legislature and legislative and executive branches late last year signed off on President Biden's infrastructure proposal, which will bring $3.8 billion worth of funds to the state. And Topeka stands to receive some of that funding. And so I'm not sure why we haven't been discussing those funds when it comes to the infrastructure challenges facing Topeka, challenges that multiple governing bodies have knowingly kicked down the road for years. Given the, hold on. Given the disparate effects the pandemic has had on Topeka's low to moderate income individuals and neighborhoods, that includes 21 Topeka NIAs, and how the pandemic has exacerbated the challenges already present for those populations, I believe the vast majority of the ARPA funds should go to community purposes that specifically address those challenges. When it comes to the ARPA funding, it's a one-time opportunity we have, and I hope that we don't miss it by choosing to, quite frankly, misallocate the ARPA funds and continuing to ignore the very real and very large challenges facing our most vulnerable residents. I would like to thank you all for your time and consideration, and at this point also a quick thumbs up to the process the city started regarding the work groups that are looking at some of the issues moving forward, especially on the community side. I'm a member of the neighborhoods group. We met on January 25th and had very good discussions, I think, about items that will become a part of these discussions. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. As I understand it, those were the 13 people signed up?
Yes.
Okay. Just want to say thank you for all those people who appeared before the council tonight and expressed their views. We'll move on now to public comment. We have signed up for this evening Carrie Strahler via Zoom. Pardon? Strahler? Ms. Strahler, are you there? I see you. Can you hear us?
Now can you hear me?
Yep.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, council members. My name is Carrie Strahler, and I live in District 2 in the Oakland community. And I'm reaching out to you tonight because I've been concerned that we've seen an increase in fires started in our vacant homes. I'm very concerned that our homeless population has been getting into these homes and might get hurt. I thought that with the COVID restrictions, they may have diminished resources with social distancing at the Topeka Rescue Mission and other resources available to them. And I reached out to Barry Feeker's assistant, Kim, at the Topeka Rescue Mission, and they really need sleeping bags. They need sleeping bags, heavy coats, boots, They need hand warmers and body warmers for their street outreach program. Nobody wants to hear or witness our homeless persons freezing to death on a sidewalk in Topeka. And I humbly ask for a few ARPA dollars to get those amenities out to them. That's all I wanted to ask for. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stroller. I have next Mr. Joseph Ledbetter. Is Joe in the audience? Don't see him. Okay. No other person signed up for public comment. We'll move on to item 8 on the agenda, announcements. Madam Clerk?
Okay, the first agenda we have is for the special meeting on Saturday, February 12th. That will run from 9 to 1 o'clock at the Holiday Building. It's a work session, so no public comment will be allowed at that work session. We have one non-action item. It's an overview of the state of Kansas and Shawnee County ARPA fund allocations. And then we'll have 2 action items related to infrastructure allocation recommendations and the application process.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager?
The only announcement I have is just a reminder that Saturday we have our ARPA workshop, and it'll be at the Holiday Building, same hours as last time.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to Councilman Lesser, if he's still with us, for announcements.
I'm here, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. I clearly will not be at the meeting, unfortunately, on Saturday. I tested positive for a second time for COVID, and having some big fun here. So I'm hoping that I'll feel good enough to be able to participate via Zoom on Saturday. And my camera, yes, is off on purpose. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councilman.
Nobody wants to see me right now, trust me.
Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have 2 things. One, to Department Director Spiker and City Manager and whoever all got these monitors for us. This is wonderful to be able to see my colleagues during the meeting, for one thing. It's very clear, so thank you for adding this amenity here at the chambers. Second, I've touched on an advance announcements of this before, but as we all know, race and culture are a big issue in our country and here in Topeka right now. I want to encourage my colleagues regarding the 2nd annual cohort of Mosaic Partner Pairs, that if you personally would want to enroll or you know people who either would be eager to enroll or really ought to be there. Mosaic Partner Pairs is intended to advance inclusion and equity and opportunity in the community by creating that foundational fabric of relationships, building relationships, one relationship at a time between people who are different on the outside but have similarities on the inside. To kind of self-discover each other and themselves, to grow and trust and move forward, being able to say when something comes up or there's an issue, you know what, I know somebody, I've learned so much. We can do this in this community. The 9-month engagement from April to December. First round applications are due this week on the 10th. We are looking to at many people as we can get in by the 10th. We want to, because we want to see how the more you have in the pool of applicants, the more likely we are to be able to pair those folks who are different on the outside but have similarities on the inside. That's how that pairing works. And so, again, if anybody has questions, feel free to get hold of me to look for more information or the application portal. You go to topekaunited.org, go to TU Initiatives, and then the Mosaic 2022 drop-down page. We have a number of people involved already and signed up, but we've got a lot of capacity and are eager to see you all or people that you know. Thank you.
Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala.
Thank you, Mayor. I know last week, Mayor, you had said that you and I had to have a dialogue on the meaning of human infrastructure. And I thought, well, I'll just do something in my announcements. And so, of course, handy dandy Google. I was looking through different definitions. Well, all had a lot of similarities. And I looked in the Tech and Science Dictionary on the meaning of the words human infrastructure. And what it stated is aspects of the facilities and systems of a place that affect and involve its people. It's often understood to involve things like healthcare, childcare, education, and job training. Now, I know that there is a lot of dialogue happening, especially at the DC level, right, about what really is human infrastructure. And does it include societal needs? And that's often what you see the wrangling about. And to me, and I think for a number of the folks that spoke today, it does. It's about societal needs being a component of this. And so I was thinking about all the folks that came up and talked today, and I thought, there's so many things that they have no control over. They don't have control over how much they pay on their property tax. That was a big topic of conversation in the community budget meetings we have. They don't have any control over how much they pay out on taxes for groceries, how much they pay on their vehicles, again, things of that nature. And it seems to me that as everybody keeps talking about this once-in-a-lifetime money, that I believe that especially for folks that see what's going on in their communities across Topeka and those that work for social service agencies, they do believe that they have a right and we have an obligation on how we listen and the utilization of these funds beyond infrastructure. I mean, like concrete infrastructure. And so I was writing things down and I thought, what is it that we know right now? And we know that COVID caused havoc to our economy. And we also know, along with COVID, families across the spectrum here in Topeka are struggling in a myriad of ways. We also know that in this city, we do not have a living wage. We have a deep need for affordable childcare, and we are considered a childcare desert. We have a deep need for mental health services for folks across this city. And we have, for anyone that is not aware in Topeka, a serious crisis of chronic, unsheltered homeless. That has also been a big topic in these community-based sessions where they're spanning across the city. There's a large encampment at 29th and Gage, I was told last night. And I think, too, that what we also determine in dialogue at these community meetings, that no matter how good a job the Topeka Rescue Mission may be doing, they have a high barrier for being able to get into their housing. So what we need is we need to seriously, whether, with using this ARPA money or down the road as we talk with the budget, we need to seriously start looking about the possibilities of low barrier shelters or new programs within the city, such as Built for Zero, which in similar sized populations and demographics in Rockford, Illinois, has been able to reduce their chronic unsheltered homeless to almost zero. Things have to change up because we are in a crisis mode. We also know that we have a need for more job training. We have a serious issue that we have not addressed yet on the council for dialogue on the living wage, for the disparity between black and brown and low-income white folks on being housing cost burden, and again, no living wage, and higher levels of being evicted. We also know that we'll be getting funds from the state. That is a given. We know that we're going to get those. We also know that we have a new grant writer, to my understanding, and I would suggest that she seriously start aggressively looking at more funding for infrastructure. So I know that this was the time when folks had to come and try to give a snapshot of what our communities are dealing with. I also know, just so folks know for transparency, we were given a list of all of the money that the state has been given and where that money may go. Now, when I look at that, the figures don't add up to me, so I'm going to be asking for more clarification. I do not think that because we've been given a list of what the state is going to give out, that we should automatically expect that agencies or organizations that are asking for money are going to get that, because to some extent that's a cop-out on our part, because we don't know that yet. Just like the organizations don't know how much they're going to get, we don't know how much we're going to get. And so I think that as we move forward on this, since this is probably going to be the only time that public needs to speak, the number of organizations that I have talked to in the last week and a half has been like mind-boggling, and there is a crisis. And if we talk about economic development, if we talk about wanting to sell Topeka, then we have to be honest about the problems that we're having here and address those, so that when we go and sell Topeka as being the best place to live, we know that there folks that move here are going to be able to also get mental health services. They're also going to be able to get good child care. They're also going to be able to have affordable housing, and they're not going to look at a place that keeps asking and asking for some kind of change in solutions, but yet we look more to trying to deal with the problems of concrete infrastructure. Again, I'm going to say I support totally reduction of, how much we borrow, but this is, and paying for cash, but this is a really pivotal time. And I think that it's just really cut a lot of people to the bone, because in addition to all of those social service organizations that are out there, those folks are tired. Everybody is tired. And so I would just say that there has to be more dialogue, and I'm hoping for that on Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you, Wynn. Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I got an email from a lady that asked if she had to live in District 3 to get a smoke detector. And I did email her back and I told her no. And I want the public to know this is a citywide project. We got a lot of work to do. When I receive emails like that, it lets me know that we have a lot of work to do. With Monday being Valentine's Day, and I'm talking about smoke detectors, I thought about this today. I thought there's only one person on this council that loves me if I measure by smoke detectors. And that's, I'm not going to mention who that is, but he loves me 15 times. And so I hope that gets out. I hope that's in our conversation when you wish somebody a happy Valentine's Day, is do they have a working smoke detector in their home? So I hope you put the two together, and I hope you remember that.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Councilwoman. You cut out at the end, and there's one red-faced councilman sitting over here. I think he's self-identified himself. Councilman Emerson.
Thank you, Mayor. This may be a huge question, but one thing that I heard tonight a lot was childcare and housing, and it would be helpful to me if before Saturday, maybe even before Thursday or something, so we don't get it at Friday at 11:59. Is there other ARPA funding or other COVID money that might be already addressing those areas? of childcare and housing. If it'd be possible to see if there's other money coming for that or already allocated for that.
Future dollars, you mean?
Yeah, future or present dollars.
Well, we do stand to get money from the infrastructure bill, but I don't know if those specifically cover childcare.
Yeah.
And so there is a lot of.
And I didn't mean necessarily that we are getting, but I know it seems like there's about 1,000 programs out there now, and everything's like $1 billion here, $1 billion there, 400 or 500 million here, which ends up being a lot of money when you add them all together.
Yeah, and that document I sent you, the state's got a lot of.
I saw that, but I didn't know. Yeah.
What was that?
I just said, I did see that, and I was trying to go through all that, but I didn't know if there is, it'd just be, if we know of anything else, I guess I'd like to maybe know that before Saturday, if we could. And I know that's kind of asking like how many gallons are in the ocean or something, but it seems like sometimes, but if that's readily available somehow, or if you can put Josh and Adam on that. Thank you, City Manager. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Kale?
I'd just like to thank everyone that came out tonight and spoke. And I wrote down a list of everything that everyone put down. I know you can't see it because it's the green screen, but I wrote down every single thing, and I filled up a whole entire page just of putting down one time what they said, what we had, and it was really nice to hear different sides from different areas, from all over Topeka, and get their voices out. And I think that's by opening it up like we did, allowed everyone on the council and anyone that participates in these meetings to hear everything that the needs of our citizens, and we're listening to them and not just making decisions based off our own opinions. So I thought it was really good that we had so many people signed up tonight.
Thank you, Councilman. Anything further?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Nager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I only love Sylvia a third of what that council member loves Sylvia, so I'll work on my side. I just wanted to share my experience that I had at the Children's Discovery Center yesterday. I learned so much about not only the Children's Discovery Center and the programs that they offer, but I learned a lot about what we talked a lot about tonight, childcare, and making sure that those resources are there for our children and families in Topeka, and making sure that that's more and more equitable and more available. And I hope that we do talk about that further on Saturday, because I do think it's something that we need to make sure that we're bulking up, making sure that we invest in the future, like Ms. Garcia-Babb had mentioned. I also want to thank Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala for defining human infrastructure. It's once you start looking at the concept, I think it's clear to see how those are building blocks within our community that are absolutely essential. The final thing is on a piece of paper, and it is Mr. Rogers' KTWU Sweater Drive. You can go to ktwu.org/sweater drive, and there are several different drop-off locations in town where you can drop off, let me make sure, any size, color, or style of a gently used or new sweater, coat, jacket, or blanket. So something to keep a kid warm during these cold, last bitter, I want to say weeks, but we all know in Kansas that can fluctuate around a little bit. But making sure that we're keeping our kids as warm and healthy as possible. And so I just wanted to go ahead and share that. And a little extra story for you all. Whenever I was little, Mr. Rogers was one of my favorite TV personalities because, and let me clarify, my last name is Nager. I used to think that every time he came onto the TV, he sang, "Won't you be my neighbor?" And I thought that was specifically to me. I didn't realize he was saying neighbor. And so he's always held a very special place in my heart. So to see that people are using his example to provide to the people in our community means the world to me. So please participate. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You always have something good to add at these meetings. Oh, and to let you know, I was at a meeting earlier today with Greater Topeka Partnership, and now Matt Pavarnik is holding up signs in front of the camera, so it's catching on.
I try to do what I can.
Councilman Dobler.
Thank you, Mayor. It's hard to follow the councilwoman, but I'll try. Scott Gowan was signed up to speak tonight and was apparently not able to be here. Lazone did mention, but there is a fantastic team working on digital literacy, which covers a whole range of things. But essentially, it's leveling the playing field for everybody that needs access to high-speed internet, whether it's school children needing to do homework at night, parents needing to apply for a job, older folks needing to find health care. And I'm going to be pushing, I don't know if it's human infrastructure or infrastructure, I'm a little confused there. All I know is it's infrastructure and humans need it. So, so I'm definitely going to be, as we get into discussions of the pots of money, I'm going to be pushing for money for digital literacy, and some of that will be infrastructure. There's parts of town where getting access to high-speed internet is very difficult, very expensive. So I think we're going to be talking about internet access in some of those neighborhoods on a wireless basis, and definitely going to be pushing that. So keep that in mind as we move forward, and that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Duncan, or Deputy Mayor Duncan.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question for staff this evening, not trying to catch you off guard. This actually hit my radar before I got over here. I was at the Capitol, and so I may even be incorrect on a few things. But I know that on yesterday, the State Spark Advisory Committee met, and I believe they have set some deadlines that are actually coming up very fast, like maybe within a week or so, where they would like to start hearing from some submissions. So one, I'm just curious if we're paying attention to that process, and if so, do we have items we are planning to submit? Like I said, I believe the 14th, I believe Valentine's Day may be the first deadline for submission. So just curious, I know we've talked about Spark a little bit, but any idea where we're at on any of those submissions from our end?
We are monitoring the Spark funding and what they're spending it on, and they do have deadlines, rolling deadlines. So the first one is for, like you said, the 14th for certain things. Right now, we don't have any submissions lined up for the 14th, but we'll revisit those and look and see if there is anything that sparks our mind. And
And we're confident that if we don't submit something on the 14th, that our window has not closed? Because their plan, I think, at this point is to disperse a lot of that by April.
right. And some of it is already slated and scheduled, so we'll double check and I'll let you know.
Okay, because that would be a very greatly missed opportunity if we don't at least try to get some of that money. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Yes, Councilman?
I did misspeak. We are making 2 applications on the base grant part, which is part of the Spark, and that is due by that date, 28th.
All right. Thank you. Okay. We won't have a need for a executive session this evening, not to exceed 30 minutes. If the city attorney would read, please.
I think the city clerk wanted to announce the agenda for next Tuesday's meeting first, if that's okay.
Sure.
No? Okay.
4 minutes. 4 minutes.
I'll start it. Okay, for the February 15th meeting, we have 1 board appointment to the Human Relations Commission. We have 3 presentations: Development Growth Management 2021 Year-End Report, the City of Topeka Financial Update, and a 2022 Redistricting Update. Consent agenda, we have a resolution for special events for the St. Patrick's Day Parade and a resolution for the Celtic Fox St. Patrick's Day noise exception. Action items include a final plat for Meadowlark Square subdivision that's located at Northwest 46th and Button Road. We have an ordinance for College Hill Apartments for a rezoning for PUD at 1423 Southwest Lane Street. This allows continued use of the property as a dog park for another 3 years for College Hill Apartments. And then we have the ordinances for the International Energy Conservation Code and the International Existing Building Code. And then the last item is the American Rescue Plan Act Funds Resolution.
Okay, thank you. Now, we have a need to adjourn into a 30-minute executive session, if the city attorney would read.
The motion would be to recess into executive session not to exceed 30 minutes to discuss matters related to an individual employee pursuant to KSA 754319B1. The open meeting will resume in the city council chambers. The following staff may be needed to assist the governing body in its deliberations: interim city manager Cochran and any other staff he deems necessary.
You heard the need for the session. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Councilman Dobler, second by Councilman Emerson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Okay.
We have 10 yes.
We will adjourn into executive session. Let's get about a 5-minute break. Yeah, it'll be 10. That's what I'm saying, 5. Mhm.
Little corner infill, is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, right.
That's what your phone's for. Just sit right up there.
I use my personal phone.
It is.
Are we out? Okay. Okay, we are done with our executive session, and there being no further business to come before this body, I close this meeting, declare it closed. This is really nice, though. Everybody